Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to carry a presence so strong that they don't even need to speak? They walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because they say something profound or make a grand gesture. No, it's subtler than that. It's their stillness, their silence, their refusal to play into the noise. You can feel their power without a single word being spoken. And ironically, that quiet strength tends to unsettle others. It makes them wonder, chase, overthink. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who doesn't make themselves immediately accessible. But what would happen if you did the same? If you stopped reacting to every comment, every invitation, every emotion thrown your way? If you chose silence over immediate explanations, stillness over instant replies, boundaries over people-pleasing? That's where everything begins to shift, because the world is used to you being predictable. Society teaches us to respond, to comply, to keep the peace at all costs. But the moment you step outside of that framework, when you pull back and stop offering yourself so freely, people don't know what to do with you. And that confusion reveals something powerful. They never truly saw you. They only knew how to manage your reactions. Why does that happen? Why does withdrawing cause such discomfort in others? Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So the next time someone gets angry when you become less available, ask yourself, are they really angry at you, or are they reacting to their own lack of control? When your silence provokes someone, it's not the silence itself that bothers them. It's what the silence forces them to confront inside themselves. And more importantly, it shows you how much of your life may have been controlled by the invisible strings of emotional expectation. How many times have you said yes when your body screamed no? How often have you forced a smile, replied to a message you didn't want to read, engaged in conversations that drained your spirit, all to keep a connection alive that probably wasn't built on anything real to begin with? And why? Because we're taught to believe that being loved means being available, that to matter, we must always be ready. But at what cost? Have you ever come to the end of a day and felt completely emptied out, without even knowing why? That numb, tired feeling that no nap, no food, no conversation can fix. That's what happens when you give your energy to people who never earned it, when you say yes too many times, not out of joy, but out of fear. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" Yet most of us move through life treating our time and attention like they're endless. But they're not. And the people who demand the most from you often care the least about what it costs you. So why do we keep doing it? Why do we continue overextending ourselves, giving away pieces of our soul in hopes of being seen? The answer lies in something Jung explored deeply, what he called the persona. It's the mask we wear to be accepted. We smile when we're hurting. We say we're fine when we're breaking inside. We become performers in our own lives, playing roles for the approval of others. And the more we perform, the further we drift from who we really are. But if we're all wearing masks, how do we begin to remove them? What does it take to finally reclaim our energy and become whole again? It starts with understanding what Jung called psychic energy. Every thought, every emotion, every action consumes a part of this energy. When you argue with someone who doesn't deserve your time, when you try to explain yourself to someone who has already decided to misunderstand you, when you say yes just to avoid conflict, you're spending that energy. And unlike money, you can't get it back once it's gone. There is no refund for emotional exhaustion. So the real question is, are you choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you leak power. The Stoics believed that mastery of the self was the only true form of power. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And yet, most of us are ruled by emotional impulses that we don't even question. We respond without thinking. We jump in to fix, explain, please, and protect, before even asking ourselves if it's worth it. But what if we stopped? What if, instead of always responding, we started observing? What if we learned to pause, to breathe, to retreat before we speak? Wouldn't that change everything? The problem is, silence is hard, stillness is unfamiliar, and people don't like what they don't understand. Why do people get angry when you don't text back immediately? Why do they accuse you of being distant when you don't answer a call? It's not because they miss you, it's because they no longer control you. Your availability was their comfort, your compliance was their validation. And when you take that away, they feel something they've avoided feeling for a long time: emptiness. But what about you? Are you ready to feel that same silence? To sit in the discomfort of not being needed? To face the fear of being alone, misunderstood, even disliked? That's the price of freedom. The Stoics taught that peace is not found in controlling others, but in mastering our own minds. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And bravery in this case means stepping away from old roles and patterns, even when it makes others uncomfortable. So how do we begin this process? By paying attention to what triggers us. What makes your heart race in anger? What makes you feel like you have to prove something? These are not random emotions. They are signals. They show you exactly where your boundaries are weakest. And once you know that, you can begin the real work. Not to become cold or emotionless, but to become sovereign. What does it mean to be sovereign? It means you belong to yourself, your time, your mind, your attention. No one else owns them. And from that place, something powerful happens. You stop reacting. And when you stop reacting, people no longer know how to manipulate you. Jung described projection as the unconscious transfer of our emotions onto others. But the flip side is also true. When we are too emotionally available, we become a blank canvas for others to project onto us. Their fears, their needs, their insecurities. And we mistake those projections for love, for connection, for friendship. Have you ever had someone in your life who only reaches out when they're in crisis? Who disappears the moment they don't need you? Who praises your strength only when it benefits them? They're not connecting with you, they're connecting with the role you've agreed to play. And why did you agree? Maybe because deep down you were afraid. Afraid of being seen as selfish, afraid of being abandoned, afraid of disappointing someone. But the truth is, the most effective manipulation doesn't come through yelling or force. It comes through guilt, through the silent, unspoken expectation that you owe people something you never agreed to give. But what happens when you stop playing that role? When you start saying no? When you respond with silence instead of explanations? People get uncomfortable. They start to question who you are. They might even call you arrogant, selfish, distant. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you're no longer serving their narrative. And once you step out of their story, they are left to face their own reflection. So how do we stay grounded in that moment when the pressure to explain and justify feels overwhelming? By remembering that silence is not absence, it is amplified presence. In a world that rewards noise, the person who can sit in stillness commands attention. But silence isn't just about not speaking. It's about choosing your battles. It's about recognizing that not every argument needs your voice. Not every accusation deserves your energy. Not every invitation is worth accepting. Why do we fear silence so much? Why do we think saying nothing makes us weak? Because we've been conditioned to believe that presence is performance. But the greatest power often lies in the refusal to perform, in the ability to walk away without flinching, in the choice to not engage. In ancient Stoic philosophy, this was the essence of freedom, not needing validation, not being swayed by praise or insult, but standing firm in your own values. But let's be honest, silence has a cost. You will lose people. You will make others uncomfortable. You will be misunderstood. But ask yourself, were those relationships built on truth or on your ability to be constantly available? The more you mature, the more selective you become. You realize that words are expensive, and not everyone deserves the full story. So what do you gain in return for that silence? What grows in the space once filled with over-explaining, apologizing, and reacting? Clarity, peace, strength. You begin to hear your own voice again. You remember what you like, what you need, what you value, not what others expect from you. And in that space, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop chasing connection. You start becoming one. Isn't that what we're all searching for? Not just peace with others, but peace within ourselves? Jung believed that the process of individuation, the journey to becoming your true self, required a break from the collective. It demanded isolation, not the kind of isolation that brings depression, but the sacred kind, the kind that makes you whole. So how do you know you're on the right path? Watch who leaves. Pay attention to who gets upset when you start protecting your energy. Notice who says, "You've changed," when you finally say, "No." These are not signs that you're wrong. They're proof that you've stopped betraying yourself. But doesn't that hurt? Doesn't the loss sting? Of course it does. Growth always comes with grief. You will grieve the version of yourself that used to say yes out of fear. You will grieve the comfort of being wanted, even if it wasn't real. You will grieve the illusion. But what comes after the grief? What happens after you reclaim your energy, your time, your boundaries? What comes after the silence? That's when rebirth begins. Slowly, you start building a life rooted in truth, not obligation. You attract people who don't need to use you to feel whole. You create space for things that nourish you instead of drain you. You begin to feel strong, not loud, not dominant, but quietly, unshakably strong. And isn't that the goal? To live a life where you are no longer available for anything less than what aligns with your truth. To stop settling for emotional crumbs and start demanding peace, integrity, and authenticity. That kind of life doesn't come from reacting. It comes from reclaiming. It comes from remembering that your presence is a privilege, not a promise. So now, the final question. Are you ready to be misunderstood? To be alone for a while? To walk away from what's familiar in order to return to yourself? Because that is the cost of choosing peace. But that is also the path to freedom. If this resonates with you, then you've already begun the journey. You've already taken the first step. Now, take the next one, and the one after that. Say it with your silence. Say it with your absence. Say it by simply choosing not to respond. You don't owe them a thing, but you owe yourself everything. And maybe now, more than ever, it's time to say, I choose my peace. But even when you begin to rebuild, how do you protect what you've found? How do you keep your newly reclaimed energy from being pulled back into the same patterns that once exhausted you? It begins with remembering that change isn't just a single decision. It's a daily discipline, a quiet promise you make to yourself every time the world asks you to go back to being small. Every time someone pushes your buttons, calls you cold, or tries to lure you back into the old dance of pleasing and performing, you pause, you breathe, and you choose peace again. The Stoics taught that nothing is more valuable than your inner fortress. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You can't control how others respond to your silence, but you can control what you do with that silence. You can make it a home, a temple, a sanctuary, a space where your truth echoes louder than anyone's demands. You may ask, isn't it lonely to choose yourself so relentlessly? At times, yes. You will walk alone. You will feel misunderstood. But remember, solitude is not the same as loneliness. Solitude is chosen. It is deliberate. It is sacred. The greatest philosophers, mystics, and artists all speak of the same thing. There is a silence within that holds more wisdom than 1,000 voices outside. And what do you discover in that silence? You discover that you don't have to earn love by performing, that your worth is not measured by how quickly you respond to a message or how many roles you can juggle. You begin to realize that those who genuinely value you will respect your boundaries, not resent them. The people who truly care will not disappear when you become unavailable. They'll rise to meet you where you are. Can you be strong enough to give them that chance? Can you be brave enough to no longer bend to every request, every emotion, every wave that tries to pull you back into someone else's expectations? This is where true emotional strength is born, not in resistance, but in non-reaction, in clarity, in the stillness of knowing exactly who you are and no longer needing to prove it. You start to see how much of your life was shaped by fear of being forgotten, unloved, unwanted. But once you choose stillness, once you stop being so accessible, something remarkable happens. The fear fades. It doesn't vanish in a single moment, but it weakens every time you protect your energy instead of handing it away. There's a special kind of confidence that forms in this space, a quiet certainty. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about knowing you no longer need others to define you. That is the foundation of Stoic self-respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When your thoughts are rooted in strength, not survival, your soul begins to shine through. So what would your life look like if you stopped apologizing for your absence? What if your silence wasn't a void, but a statement? A declaration that says, I am no longer performing. I am no longer giving my energy to what drains me. I am no longer available for anything that costs me my peace. That kind of clarity radiates. It doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you free. And that freedom speaks louder than words ever could. When you stop being available to everyone, you start becoming available to yourself. You open the door to better relationships, stronger boundaries, more meaningful conversations, and a life aligned with who you truly are, not who you've been trained to be. And what about those who still don't understand you, who try to guilt you, label you, twist your silence into something negative? Let them. Their confusion is not your burden. Their projections are not your truth. You no longer owe them explanations. You owe yourself alignment. This is not about living with walls around your heart. It's about knowing when to open the door and when to keep it closed. It's about preserving your energy like it's sacred, because it is. The more you practice this, the more you'll notice how the right people gravitate toward your peace, and the wrong ones disappear into the noise they can no longer infect you with. You've spent years watering dead plants, apologizing for your needs, shrinking yourself to be digestible. But not anymore. The journey begins now. With every small moment of silence, with every conscious pause, with every breath taken instead of a reaction given, you're returning home to yourself. And what you'll find when you get there is something extraordinary. You don't need to be liked to be whole. You don't need to be available to be worthy. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to be honest with yourself, first and foremost. So here's the final question. Are you ready to protect your energy like your life depends on it? Because in many ways, it does. Your time, your peace, your presence. These are not favors, they are gifts. And from now on, only those who can honor them should receive them. You've already started. You've already taken the first brave steps by choosing silence, by stepping away, by recognizing what no longer deserves your reaction. What matters now is that you don't turn back. Even if the world calls you selfish, even if people fall away, even if it hurts. Because what waits on the other side of that discomfort is something precious. Your full self, untamed, unapologetic, unshaken. So stay silent if you must. Withdraw if you need to. Rebuild in private. Emerge in peace. Let the world wonder. Let them misunderstand. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be whole. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't just scroll past it. Sit with it. Let it change something. Let it remind you of your strength. And if you're ready to keep walking this path of inner freedom and unshakable clarity, make sure to watch one of the suggested videos on the screen next. It's the continuation of this journey, and it matters more than you think. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. See you in the next one.